Hello and welcome back to Ready Steady DIY. If it's your first time here, thank you for joining us. If you've already subscribed, thank you for subscribing. Well, today I want to talk about locks. It's almost impossible to go through a day in any life without encountering a lock at some point. The front door of your house, the door of your car, the lock at the gym, somehow, some way, probably today, you put a key into a lock. When you did that and you turned the lock, somewhere inside of that lock, there was metal moving against metal. And when you have metal moving against metal, eventually, somehow, you're going to need some kind of lubricant to help that process along, or eventually the lock won't work. So if you're at that point and you just realized you got to lubricate some locks somewhere in your life, today we're going to go over some very basic beginning ideas about how to do that. We're going to look at one method I don't like, one method I used to use, and one method I use now. It's a lot to do, so let's get going. So for me, the biggest lock conundrum that I face each and every day is the puck locks on my truck. I carry a lot of equipment in my truck. I definitely use the door locks, but in conjunction with those, I added some puck locks to the doors to make sure that the equipment inside was safe. Those locks see the worst treatment of any locks on the planet, I am sure. They see road salt in the winter, they see dirt in the summer, they see massive temperature changes. It can be minus 40 on the way to the job, and then you pull inside a covered parking facility and suddenly it's room temperature, and then back out to minus 40 on the way home. These locks have it awful. Accordingly, you can imagine I'm pretty careful with them. You can't walk out to the van to start the day and not be able to get into the van because the lock is seized. So over the years, I've learned that you just have to take care of a lock and you gotta lubricate it regularly. When you consider all the lubrications that are out there, there's really two general kinds. There's wet lubricants, which are generally petroleum-based, the most popular of which is called WD-40. You've probably heard of it. It's sort of everywhere in the DIY world, and it is an excellent lubricant for some applications. But when you spray it into the cylinder of a lock, which is a really tight enclosed space, it has nowhere to go. It sits in there. And when that lock is exposed to dirt, dust, salt, all kinds of stuff, because it's petroleum based, it tends to pull that stuff into itself and not let it go. Over time, I have found that WD-40 can gunk up a lock more than it can help you lubricate it. It'll definitely be lubricated the day you do it, but over time, I find I just don't like the results. So for the locks on my truck, I tend to use dry lubricants. For a long time, I was just a spray graphite guy. In my business, we use spray graphite all the time. Spray graphite is a kind of lubricant that goes on wet. It has a carrier in it that keeps it wet so that you can spray it on. But then after a few seconds, the carrier evaporates and it leaves a nice dry carbon film that is somewhat slippery. It's really good for lubricating metal on metal contact, especially at high temperatures. That's why we used it in the film industry. For the better part of the last century, we've used lights that for the most part get really hot. Too hot to touch. But they have moving metal parts inside of them that allow you to spot and flood the light, and those have to be able to move perfectly. So generally speaking, the lubricant of choice for that was spray graphite because it can handle temperatures in excess of like 500 degrees Celsius. So because I always had a can around, I just put it in my locks too. The problem with spray graphite is it's really messy. That carbon film, it does not want to come off. It can come off. You can wash it off your fingers. If you get it on your van, you can wash it off the van. Trust me, I have a white van, I know. But it does take a lot of elbow grease, and it's really frustrating. So as a dry lubricant goes, spray graphite's pretty good, but recently I've moved over to this synthetic lubricant. This particular brand is called Lock Saver. It's a lubricant made specifically for locks, which is good. And generally speaking, it works pretty well. It goes into the lock, just like spray graphite. It goes on wet, but it has a carrier in it. That's why the carrier evaporates and you're left with a dry, clear film. This dry film does not attract dirt. It does not attract dust. It is water resistant, and it does a pretty good job inside of a lock. The downside I'm finding with this particular lubricant is that it's a little bit softer than spray graphite. So while it is a dry lubricant, it seems to wear away a little quicker than spray graphite, but that's okay. It's not on my fingers, it's not on my van, it's not on the key, which you then put in your pocket, making your pocket black. It's just a lot easier to use. So there you go, 3 ways to lubricate a lock. The most important thing when you're doing this, protect your eyes and don't breathe it in. You'd be surprised how quick the lubricant comes out of a spray can. Even if you've got the little straw perfectly lined up, it can go in, hit the back of the lock mechanism, and come right back at you. So I like to keep a little paper towel down by the front of the lock. Just use it to keep it from dripping all over the ground, keep it from hitting me in the face. Nothing wrong with putting on some eye protection and a mask if it's a new can and you don't know how strong it's gonna come out. Trust me, you don't wanna get hit in the face with this stuff. And then regardless of the lubricant you choose to put in your lock, once you put it in, put the key in, pull the key out, put the key in, pull the key out. Turn the lock a couple of times. You wanna work it. You wanna exercise the lock, which will help get that lubricant all over the moving surfaces of that lock. Once you've put the lubricant in, it should feel silky smooth. And there you have it. 3 different products, all of which will lubricate a lock for you. So do you have a way to clean or lubricate a lock that you like to use that I haven't mentioned today? If so, please feel free to leave it in the comment section below. And otherwise, I hope that helped you out. Remember to like or subscribe if you could. And with that, I'll say goodbye until next week. Take care, stay safe, have fun with your DIY projects, and I'll see you next Saturday.